Hey, everybody. I am John Anderson, Director of Media for Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. We are Nebraska's voice when it comes to Second Amendment issues. We're followed by almost 30,000 Nebraskans who all strongly believe in the rights and freedoms protected by the Second Amendment. We invited candidates running for Congress, governor, Nebraska State Legislature, city councils, and county sheriff to participate in our Online Townhall Series, Meet the Candidates. Our format for this event is an online recorded interview. Each recording is unedited. Our members have prepared questions to assess candidates running for elected office. And yes, I am reading this right off the page so I don't goof anything up. So tonight I'd like to introduce Scott Zimmerman, who is running for governor of Nebraska. Scott, thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely, John. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll jump right in here. The first question is, why did you agree to participate in this online town hall with the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association?
Well, I was disappointed to have to turn down the last invitation I had from the Firearms Association here. I had a schedule conflict, so I wasn't able to make it to one of the events that you guys had invited me to. But ultimately, I agreed to this at this point because I think it's important for informed voters in our state to have access to information on all of their options when it comes to elections to public office. I think that's a critical part of the election process and highly necessary.
All right. Next, our members wanted to know, what is your favorite firearm and how often do you shoot it?
Sure. I went back and forth on this question a few times, and ultimately, I kept circling back to my carry piece, my Smith and Wesson M&P. She's old and reliable, so it gets me where I need to go. I used to hit the range weekly since I started this campaign and trying to balance full-time work and campaigning full-time. I just don't get to the range nearly as often as I want to. I still try to get out on target about once a month still, and then spend time on a regular basis here at home doing dry fire exercises as well. So,
All right. Now we'd like to hear, what is the number one purpose of government?
Our founding fathers, the American founders, created a society based on the belief that human happiness is intimately connected with personal freedom and personal responsibility. The twin pillars of that system are ultimately limits on the power of central government and protection of all individual rights. The primary purpose of any government is to ensure that the citizens are safe and that their rights are protected under constitutional law.
Okay. Our members have several issues of interest, so let's dive in with our next question. What are you going to do to protect Nebraskans from the federal government's attempts to restrict the Second Amendment?
I'll tell you, federal government overreach, it continues to be a burden on not only Nebraskans, but American citizens across the country. The federal government's just gotten too big and too bossy. And ultimately, what it comes down to as governor of Nebraska, I would work diligently and stand on my own 2 feet in an effort to protect Nebraskans from that federal overreach, and always focus on putting Nebraska first in all decisions that are made.
All right, now we'll go a bit further with some specific issues we're addressing in Nebraska lately. What is your position on constitutional carry, and what will you do or what have you done in support of that position?
Ultimately, what it comes down to is the top 3 safest states in our nation are constitutional or permitless carry states. Crime rates are considerably lower, murder rates are lower, suicide rates are lower. 5 out of the top 10 states are exactly the same. So I'm from the school of thought that an armed society is a polite society. And statistically, criminals are far less likely to commit aggressions against another individual when they believe that individual may be armed. Contrary to that, states and cities that have the most restrictive gun laws actually have the highest crime rates and murder rates of any other states in our country. I think those facts pretty much speak for themselves in regards to the benefits of a constitutional carry. I was a huge supporter of LB 773 here in Nebraska. I was very disappointed to see it fail. And I'm hopeful that maybe we'll be able to readdress that again at some point in time. I was very vocal with my senators and those individuals that I know that work in the legislature, letting them know where I stand and what I felt, that those individuals around me needed to have their voice heard as well. As governor, I will focus 100% on supporting an individual's right to defend themselves and protect themselves, and ultimately focus on making sure that we can restore the freedom to protect our persons and our property, even that including those around us. So.
And how about your position on red flag laws? And what will you do or have you done in support of that position?
Sure. Red flag laws are, they're a slippery slope and really need to be looked at with diligence. From what I've seen, there's minimal impact in the reduction of crime or violence or suicide in states that currently have red flag laws. It's a dangerous precedent, I think, to set. The right to protect and defend yourself and your property is a right that, in my opinion, shall not be infringed until that right is been legally revoked due to conviction of violent offense or determination of mental incompetence through heavily vetted processes.
All right. As one of the few states without it, let's discuss your thoughts on state preemption of firearm laws and what will you do or have you done in support of that position?
Sure. So it's my understanding that in Nebraska, a law-abiding citizen that does carry a permit to carry concealed has preemption in any municipality that they are traveling in. And if that's not the case, that's how it should be for sure. Those individuals are allowed to travel throughout the state without fear of repercussion or being considered a criminal. And I feel that those individuals have the right to defend themselves regardless of where their feet are planted in our state.
All right. Recently, we had an opportunity to address some much needed protections via LB 300 Castle Doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on Castle Doctrine, and what will you do or have you done in support of that position?
Ultimately, I think the Castle Doctrine is a good place to start for us. Individuals should not be expected to retreat when they're defending their home or their property from malice. It just should not be something that's expected of us. I will work very closely with our legislators to ensure that they don't further infringe on those rights and constrict an individual's ability to protect themselves, their loved ones, or even their property in those situations.
Okay, in our state, we don't have the ability to remain in a place we are legally allowed to be and have a duty to retreat. What are your thoughts on duty to retreat, and what will you do or have you done in support of that position?
I certainly do not support a duty to retreat. A law-abiding citizen who carries should be able to defend themselves and others from aggression, regardless of where their feet are. I would advocate for allowing stand your ground laws to become the standard here in Nebraska.
In general, are there any specific gun laws you think should get repealed?
I'll tell you, this was the hardest question for me to come up with a response to, simply because I've never had a problem obtaining a firearm or carrying a firearm in our state. So when I look at the laws that are currently in place, I think our laws are pretty reasonable for the most part, and I think most should agree. One thing that I would maybe consider is looking at the option to restore rights of individuals who have maybe otherwise lost the right to carry once they've completed their rehabilitation process and reassimilated back into our society and our economy. If you're 21 and over and you have the right to vote, and that right has been restored, you should also have the right to defend yourself.
Okay, NFOA believes in education. What is your position on mandating firearm safety classes or programs in K through 12 public schools?
I'm going to start simply by saying I am 100% anti-government mandate in almost any circumstance. So requiring somebody to do something by law doesn't sit well with me. A big part of my plan for Nebraska is prison reform and reform of criminal justice system, and being able to take the resources that are currently being used in those situations that will now become available to provide access to public training programs for firearm safety and awareness. Those safety courses should be available throughout the entirety of our state, wherever an individual wants to attend. These programs should be marketed heavily to all Nebraskans and presented in a way that encourages active participation. By educating Nebraskans, we can absolutely reduce accidental discharges and build confidence in those individuals who may otherwise have a fear of a firearm.
All right. Being a 2A supporter, what is your position on the intent and purpose of the Second Amendment?
The writing is pretty clear on that constitutional amendment. The intent of the Second Amendment is so that American citizens have the right to keep and bear arms, and that right should not be infringed. Each and every gun law created beyond that amendment only really serves to create criminals out of law-abiding citizens. At the end of the day, criminals don't care about the law. They're going to be carrying them anyway. Anything beyond the Second Amendment really does infringe on those rights.
All right. And lastly, let's move to the Nebraska Constitution. How will Article 1, Section 1, the Statement of Rights of the Nebraska Constitution, impact your decision-making in the role you are pursuing?
A big part of my approach to this campaign, and if elected governor, I will focus 100% on serving the people of Nebraska, and I will always place the will of the governed before any law that's created by our legislature. I'll seek to serve all Nebraskans and ensure that they have a voice and are truly represented within the operation of our government business operations. I think it's necessary from a perspective of a public servant that you have a number one responsibility to uphold your oath to office, and then to ensure the rights of those you govern are protected with fidelity.
All right. So if anybody would like to reach out to you and get either a follow-up or some clarification on any of the answers that you've given tonight, how can people reach you, Scott?
The best spot to find me would be via my website, which is votezimmerman.com. If you're on Facebook, you can also find me at Zimmerman, the number 4, GOV, Zimmerman for Gov on Facebook. But the website is preferred because you can message me direct and it pushes directly to my phone, and response time tends to be a little bit faster than trying to figure out a way to navigate the Facebook messaging system, which is kind of a cumbersome process. So.
All right. So these questions were compiled again by our members. So thank you, members, for compiling the questions.
Yes, thank you.
And Scott, thank you for joining us tonight. This has been Scott Zimmerman, running for governor of Nebraska.
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet.